Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse, where we talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today, you know what? I've got better things to do. I'm not reviewing Cole Swindell. I have better things to do, like laundry. Yeah, I know I've reviewed worse, but I don't want to do with this. I have nothing else to say. Self-titled album from Cole Swindell. Look, I have no idea why I'm doing this review. And at this point, does anyone care? Does anyone really want to hear me deliver yet another discussion / rant about bro country like the other half dozen times I've done it in front of every other act in this particular vein that I've covered? I've given this particular musical subgenre more intellectual consideration and brain cells than it really does deserve. Talked about the good albums, I talked about the bad albums, and at this point, I don't know what else to say. Despite songwriters, country artists, and even radio programmers and music executives saying that we've hit peak bro country back a few months ago, we're still getting artists coming out of the woodwork trying to cash in on this pointless trend. How and why does this keep happening? Well, in the case of Cole Swindell, we actually have an answer for that. See, what you might not know is that bro country superstar Luke Bryan and popular Nashville songwriter Dallas Davidson were roommates at Georgia Southern University. Well, it turns out, this is so hilariously ironic that I couldn't believe it when I first read about it, that Luke Bryan belonged to the fraternity Sigma Chi, and so did Cole Swindell at Georgia Southern. In fact, Swindell sold merchandise for Luke Bryan for 3 years before trying to make it as a songwriter himself. Fortunately for him, he hitched his start to the right wagon. Luke Bryan and bro country became the biggest things in country music apparently ever, and Cole Swindell became his opening act. Now, to be fair, Cole Swindell is a little bit unique in comparison with most bro country acts, even though still has the same underwritten Wikipedia page that all of them do, in that he doesn't quite rely on the Nashville songwriting machine as heavily, and he has writing credits on nearly all of his songs on his opening album. Hell, he's even written songs for other artists like Luke Bryan, Florida Georgia Line, Thomas Rhett, Scotty McCreery, and even Chris Young's half-hearted stab at bro country last year. The bad news is that everything he's written is pretty damn close to terrible. Some of the worst songs on the albums in question, and at best only rising up to being interchangeable and bland and homogeneous. And that was one of the reasons I didn't want to have to cover his debut album, just really abuse it for 5 minutes. Sadly, I don't even think I'll be able to do that, because really, this album operates as a microcosm of modern bro country as a whole. Sterile, meat-headed, constantly repeating Southern cliches, dumb as sand, and really getting rather played out by this point. And after multiple listens through Cole Swindell's self-titled album, I struggled to put together any coherent thoughts regarding this record. I can't even really hate it because, well, it's too blissfully stupid to even really hate. Now, I should explain. So let's start with the very, very limited list of things that this album does get right. Cole Swindell, he's a decent singer, and even though I don't get a lot of texture or personality from his smooth delivery, and for the most part, you can tell he's just happy to be here. And you can tell he's throwing a lot of positive energy into this album. He doesn't take himself that seriously and only occasionally becomes obnoxious on the worst tracks of the album, and that's agreeable. And on a technical level, his songwriting isn't terrible. It's definitely clumsy, and coming down from Sun Kill Moon to this induces some pretty definite whiplash, but it's not egregiously awful or sloppy or even all that offensive. But in a way, I kind of wish it was, because there is nothing on this album that hasn't been done to death a dozen times or more in the past year, especially in the lyrics. You get your party songs, your attempt at love songs, the songs about picking up girls and good old boys and living country that we haven't heard time and time again, and none of it has any flair or texture or even that much wit or humor. There's no story on this album that I haven't heard elsewhere sometime before, and I could swear that some of the lyrics were written by throwing a grab bag of bro country songs and cliches into a blender. Now, the closest thing Cole Swindell gets to romance is the Luke Bryan co-written song I Just Want You, or maybe Swayin', and really they're just more bland than anything else. And that's before he starts getting aggressively obnoxious, like on Hope You Get Lonely, which is a song saying to a girl that he hopes that she gets insecure and she gets lonely. calls him, and then they can have sex in an encounter that Swindell describes as if she has a little room for a little regret. And alongside that display of maturity and charm is Ain't Worth the Whiskey, a southern pandering drinking song about Cole Swindell naming every other reason he's drinking at the bar besides the X in question, mostly because you ain't worth the whiskey. Ugh. I never like these songs when guys make these bitter little breakup songs and try to play it cool, because they always come out of it looking like assholes who are very clearly not over the girl, and you know what? That's exactly what happens here. But those are the obnoxious tracks that stand out and actually leave an impression on me. The sad fact is that the rest of this album just doesn't. You see, there's a funny thing about music. It doesn't have to be intelligent, even though there are a lot of critics, including myself, who would prefer music that was smarter or more insightful. There isn't anything inherently wrong with just making dumb, upbeat party songs. Hell, Andrew WK has been doing it for a decade, and he does it well. He's got it down to an art. The problem is that you need to compensate for a lack of intellect. You need to have charisma or flair or charm, or at least pump it up to 11 so it can have some hard rock edge or inspire some more primal emotions within you. And this is where Cole Swindell's album falls flat on its face, because the instrumentation and production on this album are terrible. I sincerely hope they were trying to go for a pop country vibe and they weren't trying to have any rough energy, because this might be the most polished, sterile country music I've ever heard since, well, shit, Taylor Swift's Red. The guitar tones are polished and completely devoid of texture. The chord progressions and guitar solos could have been written by a computer that I programmed, and there's more electronic elements in the synth choices and in drum machines than I've heard in some rap songs this year. Now, I won't deny that the electronic elements sound cohesive with the rest of the instrumentation, but that's because it's so sterile, polished, and painfully weak, with none of the hooks having remotely any staying power in my mind. Maybe that's because they're just so rudimentary and basic to be practically interchangeable with each other. I listened to this album multiple times before I sat down to review it, and I can barely remember it now, and I just listened to it multiple times today. What does that say? Ugh. Look, I don't always agree with a fellow critic who stressed that bad is the absence of good. I've listened to will.i.am albums. There's plenty of unique bad there that would infuriate me regardless. That's not an absence of good. Yet, if I were to find an album that actually fits that statement, Cole Swindell's self-titled record would be at the top of my list. Everything that this album has been done better elsewhere, either with more personality or more unique character, or at least better songwriting. I can't even see bro country fans liking this album because it's such a sterile, basic, almost soulless copy of better acts in the genre. And even on the lowest, dumbest level on which I operate, where I'm just looking to crack open beers and party and have a good time and relax, this record does absolutely nothing for me. For me, 3 out of 10, no recommendation, and even if you're in a frat house right now, skip this record, because this is not your next party album. I might not be the biggest fan of bro country in the universe, but there's better albums than this. Ugh. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. I can't imagine that this review will not infuriate any of you, so there's probably gonna be some of you who are very angry. That's completely understandable, but hey, that's how I feel, man. Is there anything I might be able to do to improve my presentation? Are there any other albums you'd like me to cover coming up in the next coming weeks that's coming out? I'd be more than happy to give them a listen. So until then, see you next time.